Hey Reddit, throwaway account here. I've done some things I'm not proud of, and I think it's time I just get one of them off my chest. I'm talking about something that still haunts me in quiet moments. A fake charity collection I ran a few years back. And yeah, it sounds cliché. I use people's empathy for my own gain. But that's exactly what I did. It all started after I hit a rough patch financially. Bills piling up, debts everywhere, and a pride I couldn't quite swallow. I wasn't desperate in the "I'll rob a bank" sense. I was desperate in a "I need money but don't want to actually hurt anyone" sense. I started thinking, what if I could make people give me money willingly? And then the idea struck me, a fake charity. Something that seemed real, something people could emotionally invest in. The weirdest part? The charity I concocted was built around someone else's pain. I picked a story that wasn't mine, a tragic story I found online. The kid, the family, the illness, they had real suffering, and I hid behind it. Every time I thought about it, I felt this strange mix of guilt and adrenaline. I was about to exploit something sacred, and yet, the planning part excited me. It started small. I needed credibility, a story that could pull people in, and a setup that wouldn't immediately look sketchy. That's where the obsession began. Every detail mattered, the narrative, the way I'd present myself, even the tone of my emails. I wasn't just lying. I was constructing a little world where my lie could live, and people would believe it. I knew from the start that if I did it right, it could work. But the thought of someone looking at me and seeing through it terrified me. I wasn't a hardened criminal. I was just clever enough to convince myself I could be. So, the planning stage was where I got really into it. I spent days online, making a fake website that looked legit, copying the tone and imagery of real charities. I picked stock photos of children in hospitals, sad but hopeful faces, and carefully wrote a backstory that seemed personal but vague enough to avoid anyone fact-checking it. I even registered a separate email, one that sounded official, like I was part of a real nonprofit organization. Then came the social proof part. I created fake social media accounts, volunteers, and donors, who would comment on my posts, making it look like people were already helping. Every detail mattered. I scripted the messages I would send to potential donors, practicing a tone that was both sincere and desperate. I won't lie, I felt a thrill. There was this mix of anxiety and excitement as I imagined people actually believing in the cause and giving me money. It was like playing a game where the stakes were real emotions, and I was the only one who knew the truth. Finally, I went live. I started emailing people, posting on social media, even messaging local community groups. I remember the first response, an older woman who said she wanted to help, in honor of her grandchild. My heart raced as I typed back, keeping the tone perfect, grateful, humble, but desperate enough to pull on heartstrings. The first few donations came in. Small amounts at first, $10, $20, but it felt like winning the lottery. Every notification made my chest tighten and my palms sweat. I had to keep track of each donor, make personal replies, maintain the illusion. Some people asked for updates or proof, and I had to fabricate stories about hospital visits, treatments, even progress photos I'd found online. There were moments I panicked. What if someone recognized the faces? What if the hospital existed and they called? But somehow, I kept it together. The adrenaline was insane, like walking a tightrope over a pit I knew could swallow me whole. Inevitably, things started to spiral. One day, a donor emailed asking if they could visit the charity office to volunteer in person. My stomach sank. I had no office, nothing real existed. I fumbled through excuses. We were relocating, paperwork issues, COVID restrictions, anything to buy time. Each lie felt heavier than the last, like bricks piling onto my chest. Then came a comment on social media that nearly made me freeze. Someone said they thought they recognized the child in the photos. My mind raced. Did I steal the image from a real family? Was someone about to expose me? I spent hours deleting comments, blocking accounts, and rewriting posts. Even as the donations kept coming, the thrill started mingling with dread. Every ping from my phone became a little alarm bell. I realized the emotional stakes were higher than I ever anticipated. People were trusting me with money, hope, and belief, and I was manipulating it all. The guilt started clawing at me. This part is the hardest to admit. At first, the adrenaline made me feel invincible, like I was smarter than everyone else, untouchable. Seeing people donate, genuinely believing they were helping, gave me a rush I couldn't describe. I kept telling myself I was just resourceful, that I wasn't hurting anyone directly. But the guilt, the guilt hit me like waves I couldn't escape. Every time I opened my laptop, I thought about the real family whose pain I was exploiting, even if they didn't know it. I imagined someone seeing through my lies, the look of betrayal on their face. Night after night, I replayed the interactions in my head, the hope, the trust, the generosity I had twisted. There was also fear. What if a donor investigated? What if the story I built came crashing down? I felt like a tightrope walker over a canyon, knowing one misstep could destroy me and the trust one had built. And yet, I couldn't stop. It all came to a head one afternoon. I got an email from a donor who had actually tried to verify the charity's registration. My heart froze. The message was polite, curious, but insistent. They wanted proof the donations were going to the right place. For a moment, I felt like my entire world was about to collapse. I panicked. I tried to come up with a plausible excuse. We're awaiting paperwork, it's a new branch, technical delays. Each message I typed made my hands shake. I could feel my chest tightening, my thoughts spinning faster than I could control. I kept imagining the police showing up at my door, my parents finding out, everyone I had lied to realizing the truth. Then, out of sheer luck, or maybe karma avoiding me that day, they accepted the excuse and didn't press further. I breathed a shaky sigh of relief, but the scare left me raw. I realized how close I had come to everything unraveling, and it terrified me. After that close call, something inside me shifted. I couldn't stop, and honestly, I think I craved the danger. I started taking bigger risks, asking for larger donations, posting more emotionally charged stories, even inventing urgent emergencies that required immediate funding. Each new post felt like walking further out onto thin ice, but the thrill was addictive. I became obsessive. I checked my fake accounts constantly, replied to every comment within minutes, and carefully tracked each donor. Some donors started asking for updates or progress photos, and I had to fabricate entire narratives, hospital visits, treatment updates, tiny victories that weren't real. The web of lies grew so tangled I started confusing myself. And the emotional toll intensified. I felt this strange cocktail of pride, fear, and shame swirling inside me. I knew what I was doing was morally wrong, but part of me rationalized it. I'm not hurting anyone physically, I told myself. Still, the guilt was gnawing at the edges, whispering that one misstep could ruin everything. The tipping point came sooner than I expected. One evening, I received a message from a donor that hit me like a punch to the chest. She told me she had just lost her child to the very illness I was claiming to help. Her words were raw, desperate, filled with grief, and I realized in an instant that I was exploiting real human pain. For the first time, the thrill vanished. My stomach churned, my hands shook, and guilt slammed into me so hard I could barely breathe. I had spent weeks spinning lies, manipulating people's generosity, and now I was confronted with the real consequences of my actions. I felt nauseous, sickened by my own behavior, imagining the countless donors who believed they were helping save lives while I profited. That night, I stared at the ceiling for hours, replaying every donation, every message, every lie. The adrenaline was gone. All that remained was shame, and the terrifying knowledge that I had gone too far. After that message, I knew I had to act fast. The adrenaline that had fueled me for weeks was replaced by panic. I began systematically covering my tracks, deleting posts, closing fake accounts, and scrambling emails. Every message I sent afterward was carefully worded to avoid raising suspicion. I told donors that the charity was merging with another organization, that operations were temporarily halted, anything to stop questions without admitting the truth. Even as I tried to escape the situation, fear clawed at me constantly. I imagined someone discovering the fraud, reporting it to authorities, or worse, realizing the exploitation of real suffering. Sleep became impossible. I would wake up in the middle of the night, heart racing, thinking of every donor and every dollar I had taken. There was a strange, sickening mix of relief and dread. I had successfully avoided immediate exposure, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it was only a matter of time before the web I had built collapsed entirely, and I would have nowhere to hide. Once I cut everything off, there was this eerie quiet. The chaos, the constant messaging, the thrill, they were gone. But in their place was a heavy, suffocating guilt I couldn't escape. I kept thinking about the donors who had trusted me, some giving significant portions of their savings, believing they were helping a child in need. And worst of all, that woman who had lost her child. Her grief had become a tool I had twisted for personal gain. I didn't get caught legally, at least not immediately, but the emotional consequences were brutal. I felt like I was carrying a stone in my chest at all times. Every time my phone buzzed, every time I saw someone raising money for charity, it was a reminder of what I had done. I became hyper-aware of the fragility of trust and how easily it can be abused. In a way, I felt empty. The rush was gone, replaced by the stark realization of the harm I had caused, and the person I had become in the process. After the dust settled, I started replaying everything in my head, again and again. I kept asking myself, who am I that I could do something like this? The lies, the manipulation, the careful construction of a fake world. It wasn't cleverness. It was exploitation, plain and simple. I wasn't just taking money. I was taking trust, hope, and faith in humanity and twisting it for my own gain. I realized how much my actions had changed me. That person who felt thrill and pride from fooling people, he wasn't me, or at least not the me I wanted to be. I became hyper-aware of how easily I could rationalize bad behavior, how quickly excitement could override morality. I also started thinking about the people I hurt indirectly. Some donors may have continued giving to other causes because of the emotional manipulation I practiced, others may have become cynical. It was a hard, bitter pill to swallow, understanding that my selfishness left ripples beyond just the money I stole. After weeks of staring at my own guilt, I realized I couldn't just move on and pretend none of it happened. I started trying to make small amends, not publicly, not to clear my conscience in front of anyone, but in private ways. I donated anonymously to real charities that helped children with serious illnesses. I avoided drawing attention to myself, but every time I did it, it felt like a tiny step toward balancing the scales. Even with those actions, the weight didn't fully lift. I still thought about the trust one had broken, the lives I had toyed with, and the emotional manipulation I had orchestrated. Redemption, I realized, isn't about erasing mistakes. It's about taking responsibility and trying to ensure they don't happen again. I also began journaling, documenting my experiences in detail, hoping that by confronting my own flaws honestly, I could learn more about why I did what I did and prevent myself from ever falling down that path again. Even after trying to make amends, the guilt never really went away. It lingered in quiet moments, in unexpected triggers, a news story about a sick child, a fundraiser on social media, even casual conversations about charity. Every time, I felt that familiar pang of shame, a reminder that my actions had consequences far beyond what I had imagined at the time. Sometimes I would replay the worst moments in my mind, the emails, the fake updates, the desperate gratitude from donors who had no idea they were being manipulated. I couldn't escape the thought that I had taken something sacred, trust, hope, generosity, and turned it into a game for my own benefit. At the same time, the lingering guilt became a strange teacher. It forced me to confront my moral failures, recognize patterns in my behavior, and think deeply about empathy, honesty, and the way I interact with others. I couldn't undo the past, but I could let it shape me into someone more conscious, careful, and accountable. Eventually, I had to face myself without excuses. No emails, no fake posts, no adrenaline rush to hide behind, just me, staring in the mirror, asking, why did I do this? It wasn't financial desperation alone. There was vanity, a craving for control, the thrill of tricking people, and a dangerous curiosity about how far I could go without getting caught. Owning that truth was brutal. I confronted the fact that I had harmed real people emotionally, even if no one pressed charges. I manipulated trust, preyed on grief, and justified it to myself in ways that now feel shameful and hollow. Accepting that part of myself, the selfish, manipulative part, was terrifying, but it was necessary. That self-confrontation didn't magically make me feel better. It didn't erase the guilt, but it gave me a strange clarity. I realized that accountability isn't about punishment from others. It's about refusing to let your darker impulses define your future. And in that painful clarity, I started to rebuild who I wanted to be. Looking back, the biggest lesson I learned is simple but harsh. Exploiting others' trust and pain comes back to haunt you, even if you never get caught. The thrill fades fast, replaced by shame, guilt, and a gnawing sense of self-betrayal. I thought I could control everything, manipulate emotions without consequence, but the truth is, it changes you. It makes you smaller, colder, and hyper-aware of the harm your actions can cause. If there's one piece of advice I can give anyone tempted to take a shortcut through someone else's misfortune, it's this: pause. Think about the people on the other end, their hopes, their trust, their vulnerability. Nothing is worth that weight on your conscience. And if you've already crossed that line, don't bury it. Take responsibility, make amends where you can, and let the experience shape a better version of yourself. I still struggle with guilt daily, but I've also learned that acknowledging mistakes honestly and refusing to repeat them is the only way forward.